Welcome back to the Nueva Vida Group podcast. We are a privately owned real estate advisory company that supports the high net worth and the ultra high net worth community on real estate acquisitions, project management, and development. And today we're going to talk about our CEO and co-founder Jack Ballantine and have a quick chat about where it began and his story and his journey from where he was to where we are now. So, where did it all begin?
A long time ago now.
Yeah.
It began about 18 years ago. So I was 18. I just sort of started working at a gym whilst also working on building sites, and met a guy who just thought, God, he's got a nice car and a nice watch. What does he do? And he was an estate agent, and so he said, "Come along, do a Saturday and see what you think." And it really sort of clicked on from there. So I worked in Southwest London. Really sort of very much high street agency, learning, listening, going out and do viewings. It was an amazing time. It was an amazing buzz and experience. Um, I loved
What
it.
year was this? I think it'd be good to know.
Back in 2008, literally just as the crash happened.
Yeah.
I think I started on I basically did a Saturday viewing job on the Saturday, loved it. And he said, look, why don't you just start on Monday? So quit working at the gym, quit working on building sites, and literally just started straight away on the Monday. And I think maybe 2 or 3 weeks into it, the crash happened. Everything went, it's hard to explain now because I don't think people really realize what it was like, but everything just sort of stopped dead. And, we've gone from having, I remember like the Saturday viewings were like, you're talking 300 viewings happening across a very small office. There was only four of us in this tiny little room on a high street on Clapham High Street, to literally nothing overnight. So it was quite a shock. Held on to my job. I didn't take a salary for a little bit. I had a little bit of money left on my desk every now and then to help me pay for fuel and stuff. But just stuck it out, and I loved it. I loved the buzz. I loved meeting people. Couldn't believe that I was seeing like these homes. I remember like there's a road called Macaulay Road and off Clapham Common, and it beautiful big homes, and I just remember thinking, wow, this is just amazing. So it sort of really got me sort of interested, and I'd already quite interested in property anyway, even at that young age. But yeah, it got me really interested. And then from there, about after 5 years, I was asked to go and meet a guy called John Worth, who had what can be described as sort of like a great big warehouse style office out in sort of towards Wembley sort of way. And I sort of walked into this office, and it was again a buzz of activity. And I thought, what is going on here? And they were managing, 2,500, 3,000 properties across sort of East London, and they were all brand new builds. And again, it just sort of my sort of energy peaked towards new build and new development instantly. So their mandate really was that they were supporting developers who were going to Asia, promoting and selling new developments, selling them off plan. And then we, on the other end, were doing the rental. So the owners would give us the rental contract, and we would then rent those properties out and manage them on their behalf. And at this stage, I've sort of never really been to Asia. I'd never been exposed to corporate life. I'd never been exposed to FTSE 100 developers or anything like that. And I was sort of thrown in at the deep end. I went off on a trip. I met two guys from CBRE, Julian and Luke Mills. I met another guy called Peter Murray from JLL. Spent sort of a year flying back and forth, seeing these exhibitions, doing these rental contracts. And then a year later, I was offered a job to go and work at CBRE. And that's sort of where my corporate career started.
Yeah.
And I really cut my teeth then. I really, stepped up, say a gear, but, stepped up 5 or 6 gears really.
So at CBRE then, what were you doing? So you mentioned that you were traveling around, and we lived together at this point, didn't we? And you were, I think, on a flight every 4 days to Hong Kong and Singapore and Malaysia. So what were you doing, and what was the mandate there?
The job role there really. So when I joined them, I'd had a year of traveling and being at these road shows and understanding the buyers and the investors that were buying these apartments in Asia, and the properties were obviously in London. But the job at CBRE, which I loved, married sort of like development consultancy, which is something I learned there, which is sort of understanding developments and projects and how to market them and what buyers wanted and what buyers needed and users wanted from the homes, and obviously the sales and marketing side of stuff. So my sort of main job there really was to act as like the liaison between the big sort of London developers. So you're talking FTSE 100 companies, sovereign wealth funds, private family offices. So these developers were big names in London, really. So they were people like Berkeley Group, so St George, people like that. Sovereign wealth funds, so people like Qatari DR, who just incredible developments across the South Bank, Chelsea Barracks, Canary Wharf Group. That was incredible working with them because their vision for Canary Wharf Group was an amazing experience. Mount Anvil, a few other sort of big, sort of well-known, established house builders in London. And my job was really to sit with their sales directors as the liaison between them and our teams in Asia, who were, hosting the exhibitions. And it was an amazing journey because we'd worked with projects. There's one called London Dock, which was the old News of the World site in East London. And, we worked with St George, really from a very early stage. They said, we bought this site, and we worked with them on how the layouts were going to be, the unit mix, the sales strategy, obviously, and at this time we were talking, we were doing sort of like a weekend in London, opening as like an exhibition. We had people from all over the world flying in. We were doing 150 sales.
Yeah.
And then we were literally so what we would do is we'd do on a Saturday or on a Sunday, we would do the UK, do an official UK launch. We'd have queues down the road. It was incredible. And then we'd finish that on a Sunday night, fly to somewhere really unusual and land in, say, maybe we would go to Shanghai or Beijing, and we would do a Monday and a Tuesday doing dinners there with investors and buyers, talking about the scheme. And then we'd fly from there down to Hong Kong, and then we would run, a full sales weekend there, and we might do 200 sales, 300 sales over the course of that weekend. Then on that Sunday night, rather than fly home, we'd jump on another flight and fly to Bangkok. And then we might fly to Kuala Lumpur. And then we might fly back to Singapore and do another weekend. And we just repeated this 40 weeks a year. It was relentless. Every single weekend we'd be away. So I think when we lived together, I saw you maybe once a week when I came home to change my suitcase around.
Yes. It was the heydays, wasn't it? So that was CBRE. So then what was next?
Well, I loved that job, and I loved the experience. And I learned an awful lot over my sort of working career, working for someone else. But I've always wanted to, and always been quite entrepreneurial. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily a corporate man. I think I just was in the right place at the right time and was really good at building relationships. So I decided after, a really good tenure at CBRE, nearly 5 years, that it was sort of time to try and do something on my own. And I remember I talked to you, wouldn't I, and say, like, I really want to go and do this. And the big thing for me has always been the quality high-end property. I've always loved design. I've always loved product. I've always loved, really super high-end finishes and things like that, and design. So my view was that I can sort of step away from CBRE and do a similar role to what I was doing there for smaller developers in London. Because London, you've got the big, developers building 2, 3, 4, 1,000 unit projects, and then you've got very small boutique developers who are creating, amazing single homes or 3 or 4 homes, really very specialist boutique projects. And we set up in Notting Hill, had an office there. You then joined me, which was the start of our journey together, which we've always wanted to do. Yeah. And I was really sort of pushing to, be a consultant and advisor to those developers at the start. And then we were, introduced to a very boutique high-end developer in Marbella, and I sort of just flew over really to go and have a look and understand their projects, understand their schemes and what they were doing. And I sort of opened my eyes really to a world of, I've done the big sort of corporate flashy stuff. I've done, very boutique London high-end product, but now we're in a world of European holiday homes.
Yeah.
And instantly I just straight away sort of fell in love with them, really fell in love with the projects, the product, the lifestyle, everything that these holiday destinations had to offer.
I was going to say, what would be your comparison then to obviously dealing with the luxury property markets in London, then going to kind of the European property markets? What was the biggest difference in between?
It's two different worlds. I mean, you're coming from what is, it's in London, for example, it's unregulated, but there's a huge amount of track record, prestige, high quality, operators, to a world where you've got people with brilliant visions, amazing eye for detail. I'm not saying we don't have that in London, we do have that in London as well, but in somewhere like southern Spain, people really understand products, they understand design, but that sales experience and that sales sort of what's the word, I guess, but I use the word prestige, but some people with a real sort of grasp on how to service a high-end client, it was basically non-existent. We were working for a developer and our job was to help them engage with an international audience through other agents as well as ourselves. And people were doing viewings and didn't have a clue what they were showing, but one of the villas we worked on and we were involved in the sale of was 14 million euros. So you're not talking small price point, you're talking quite very much at the top end of the market at that point in Marbella. So I think that was the biggest point of difference.
So why is the business called Nueva Vida Group?
It's called Nueva Vida Group because it means new life in Spanish. So when you and I moved out to Spain, this is around COVID, we were involved in a project and had a job role, and that sort of fell through, and we were sort of set to sort of restart. So we rebranded to Nueva Vida, which means new life, and I think it's a great name because we are often helping people go and sort of not build new lives, but they are sort of buying a home, a holiday home they've once dreamt of buying, or they are retiring, or they're building their dream home. So I love our brand name and I love what it means really.
We're called Nueva Vida Group, so please just break down the services that we provide to our clients.
So we do 3 services, and these are our 3 core pillars that we really focus on. We really play to our strengths. So number 1 is we do acquisitions, and by acquisitions we're retained by private clients. Generally, they're international private clients who are buying a home in a European destination mainly. We've done business in other places like Dubai, a little bit of interest in the US, but to our core is European luxury destination homes. And the client will retain us to go through that journey with them. So we'll go and source and find the properties, and we'll manage the entire process on their behalf. And obviously we've done podcasts of going into detail about how that all works. The second service that we offer is project management. It's a service that's really grown. We didn't intend to set up project management, but over the years we've become, I would say, very boutique but experts in project management. We've got an amazing team, and our job there really spans from a client saying, I'm thinking about redesigning the interiors of my home. They may want new kitchens, new bathrooms, change the layout of the living area, update the spa, very sort of what you call small projects, all the way through to large scale things like what we're doing now, which is a 650 meter square basement, or an entire new build project. And then the third thing we do, which is development, which is something that we sort of, you and I lead on, is just being very sort of looking at individual little projects from time to time, whether there's something we'll do ourselves or whether that be a joint venture with an investor or a homeowner. But there are sort of 3 focuses and our sort of core pillars as a business.
What is it about real estate that inspires you?
I think for me, it's 2 really important things. One is, for you and I and our business, it's relationships. We're meeting incredible people, incredible clients from all over the world regularly, and sort of delivering for them and providing a really focused high-end service. The second thing is sort of my personal, the thing that really inspires me is just quality products. I love really beautiful homes, really well designed homes. I love seeing through a project. Obviously with for example, the basement we're working on now, I just cannot wait to get that finished, just see it all done. So for me, it's those two things: is the people that we meet and the relationships we build, and ultimately the homes that we have access to and get to experience and see and be involved with.
Thanks for that, Jack. We're about to head into London now, aren't we? So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it shows a bit more in detail about what we do and why we do it and why we love doing it. So any questions or any feedback, just drop us a message.